In January 2001, America felt steady. The new millennium had just begun and the future looked bright. Airports were busy, but calm. You could walk someone all the way to the gate without a second thought. Classrooms were ordinary. Teachers handed out assignments. Kids passed notes. Life moved forward like it always had. At home, computers hummed softly in the corner. The internet was there, but it hadn't taken over everything yet. Phones were simple. You called, you talked, you hung up. Music lived in CD players. Shopping malls were still the center of teenage life. Movies filled theaters every weekend. The skyline of New York stood tall and unchanged. In early 2001, no one imagined how quickly everything could shift. At the box office, Shrek shocked everyone by becoming a cultural phenomenon. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone turned bookstores into midnight lines and made a new generation believe in magic again. And The Fast and the Furious didn't just launch a franchise, it changed car culture across America. Friends was still one of the highest-rated shows in the country. Reality TV exploded as Survivor pulled in more than 30 million viewers per episode. On MTV, Eminem's The Marshall Mathers LP continued dominating charts, while Britney Spears was defining early 2000s pop. Meanwhile, Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory quietly became one of the best-selling debut albums of all time. People burned mixed CDs. They waited for songs on the radio. They still argued about lyrics in person, not online. It felt like culture was accelerating, but no one knew what was coming. In 2001, technology was advancing, but it hadn't taken control yet. Most homes ran on Windows 2000. Getting online still required patience. Dial-up internet screeched through phone lines, and if someone picked up the house phone, your connection was gone. AOL wasn't just a service, it was the internet for millions of Americans. ICQ and AIM chat rooms buzzed every night. A green dot meant someone was online. Cell phones were mostly indestructible bricks. The Nokia 3310 became legendary for its durability. Music still spun inside portable CD players. You carried a Discman carefully, hoping it wouldn't skip. Gaming had entered a new era. The PlayStation 2 was breaking sales records. The Game Boy Advance had just launched, and kids everywhere wanted one. Email was growing, but social media didn't exist. Most people still logged off and went outside. In 2001, technology felt exciting. It didn't feel overwhelming. January 20th, 2001. George Bush was sworn in as the 43rd President of the United States after one of the closest elections in modern history. The country felt politically divided, but stable. Debates were intense, but life went on as usual. The economy, however, was beginning to slow. The dot-com bubble that had inflated through the late 1990s was quietly collapsing. Tech companies were shrinking. Layoffs were increasing. By mid-2001, the US had officially entered a recession. Yet on the streets of New York, it didn't feel dramatic. The skyline stood tall. The World Trade Center were still symbols of global strength. Airports operated differently then. Security was minimal by today's standards. You could walk a loved one directly to the gate. Children watched planes take off through glass windows. Flights were routine. Travel was ordinary. The world felt open. In the summer of 2001, America wasn't preparing for disaster. It was living normally. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the sky over New York was perfectly clear. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. At first, many believed it was an accident. 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower. In that moment, the country understood this was an attack. Televisions across America switched to live coverage. Work stopped. Schools turned on the news. Air traffic across the United States was grounded for the first time in history. A third plane struck the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. A fourth plane, United Flight 93, crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers fought back. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower followed. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives that day. For hours, the sky over America was empty. For the first time in generations, the country felt vulnerable. The world had changed in less than 2 hours, and everyone who was alive that day remembers exactly where they were. In the days that followed, something shifted across America. Flags appeared everywhere, on houses, cars, storefronts. Blood donation centers saw record lines. People waited for hours, wanting to help in any way they could. The president addressed the nation, promising accountability and justice. Within weeks, Congress authorized the use of military force. By October, the United States had launched operations in Afghanistan. The phrase "war on terror" entered everyday conversation. Airports transformed almost overnight. Security lines grew longer. Procedures became stricter. The Patriot Act was signed into law in October 2001, expanding surveillance powers in the name of security. America was no longer operating the way it had in January. It had become more cautious, more alert, more united, but also more uncertain. The country had grown older in a matter of weeks. Life did not stop. Music still filled the air. In 2001, Alicia Keys released Songs in a Minor, an album that would go on to win 5 Grammy Awards. Shaggy dominated radio with It Wasn't Me. Pop and R&B felt everywhere. People still drove with the windows down, still sang along. At the movies, audiences lined up for magic. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone introduced a new generation to Hogwarts. And in December, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring transported viewers to Middle-earth. For 3 hours at a time, the world felt different. Sports carried on too. The Los Angeles Lakers were dominant. The NFL season resumed after a brief pause. Super Bowl 35 had already been played earlier that year. Even in grief, Americans gathered around screens. They needed stories. They needed games. They needed normalcy. And slowly, it began to return. While the country healed, technology quietly kept moving forward. In October 2001, Apple introduced the first Apple iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. It sounded futuristic. Just weeks earlier, Microsoft had launched Windows XP, an operating system that would define the next decade. The internet was still young. People logged into Yahoo to check headlines. Chat rooms were alive at night. Websites loaded slowly. Smartphones didn't exist yet. Social media had not been born. But something was beginning. The 21st century had officially arrived, and it did not look like the 1990s anymore. By the end of 2001, America was not the same country it had been in January. Children who started that year in ordinary classrooms would remember it for the rest of their lives. The sky looked different. Airports felt different. Conversations felt different. The innocence of the late 1990s was gone. Security became routine. News became constant. The world felt smaller, and more fragile. And yet people kept living. They went to school, they went to work, they celebrated birthdays, they gathered for the holidays. But something had shifted. 2001 was not just a year. It was a dividing line. The moment the 21st century truly began.